Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MEF webinar, our traditional first Thursday appointment to look outside the box and interviewing key players in the world of the mobile ecosystem, getting new ideas, new debates, new solutions. And apologies, today is the 19th of October, 2023, and if you're listening to us live, then you can get ready to ask questions and participate in today's sessions. But if you're listening on demand at your own leisure, you can pause, review as much as you like, welcome anyway, and contact if you want to ask questions later on. But today we're talking about something exciting for me because it's a very positive, very exciting topic, and everybody should be quite glued to the screens here. We're talking about making SMS bigger and better. And for many of you, that really should sound like selling more SMS as well, which is a good thing when it talking about such a big market in the first place, because we're talking about enabling non-traditional business SMS use cases. And in the world of end users, texting was person to person, P2P at one point. More recently became business. And in terms of A2P, application to person, a lot of use cases were passwords and one-time passwords as well. So there were messages sent to users, but there's much more that could be done, including call centers or solutions where you could use what they referred as voice numbers, or for me and you, some of them were fixed numbers and non-geographical numbers starting to text to consumers as well. Now, to asking all of these questions and is some guidance of what's happening there, we have Dr. Marco Lafrentz, the VP of Business and Market Development at netnumber. Now, netnumber Global Data Services is a global phone number intelligence solution with a strong presence in USA and Canada. And we're going to hear a lot about these success as well. So if you're outside those markets, do take note. That could be very important. But before I go any further, welcome again, Marco. Welcome to our webinar. And Marco, did I get it right describing netnumber as a phone number intelligence solution? There's more to it, I'm sure.
Absolutely, there is more to it. Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be here, and thank you, Dario, for the introduction. I would put it slightly different if I introduce netnumber. I think for this webinar specifically, I think it's interesting for the audience to highlight that netnumber is the central registry for non-traditional texting services in North America. And on top of that, we have like a big suite of data solutions that power telecommunication networks, communication services, but also digital identity verification globally. So that very broad set of solutions is there for the ecosystem to solve complex ecosystem challenges and to reduce both costs and operational complexity for our customers. So with that, we really underpin our day-to-day operations and providing the data that drives their texting, authentication, and fraud prevention initiatives.
Well, thanks for clarifying that. So a very important role within the US as well and other markets for the registry of the SMS as well, and everything that comes with it. And the US is a specific market for some development that happened there. So let's take a look at what kind of texting use case exists there today and what are the non-traditional ones that you were referring to before. So what's coming, what's emerging in North America?
Yeah, so let me start off to say, like, when looking at texting or messaging today, I see it as the future of customer engagement that goes beyond call centers or native apps, or just like one-time passwords, marketing, SMS, one-way communication. If you take a look at call centers, first, we have discussed at length the general aversion to phone calls because of the increase in fraud and scam, but also because of the generational shift in communication preferences in general, right? Like Gen Z, like they have moved away from like wanting to talk. Yes, voice messages potentially, but they prefer asynchronous conversations on their own terms. And I think something also driving like the changes for the use cases of texting is that if you think about a a lot of the customer engagements with businesses, if you want to reach out to them as a consumer, and you call them, you eventually end up talking to an agent. Like that can be very skilled and be in a good mood, but in majority of cases has very little to no context when you're initially calling. And that hits you in a mood where you're already being frustrated by long waiting queues with, like, I recently had the experience with like very annoying announcements, like a confusing RVR menu, like horrible melody to top it up with. Like that's not a good customer experience. So what we're seeing is that despite ongoing technological and process improvements, phone calls are often seen as an option of last resort for contacting business. So what's happening is that call centers and customer engagement in general, like the strategies there, are going through a digital transformation into multi-channel services. Obviously, that includes the ubiquitous SMS as a channel. It is still the only ubiquitous channel amongst, like next to voice. So I don't want to deny the necessity for calling a business here when saying that. Because with its benefits, calls will remain important forever. But texting particularly allows for conversational engagements and also re-engagements on the customer's terms, which is highly sought after. Being a channel that is asynchronous and contextual, you can deliver that. And at the same time, I think it's also important to highlight that text-based interactions and processes are way easier to automate. So especially with the significant improvements in AI technology, ChatGPT 4.0 and what comes thereafter, chatbots and AI assistant agents, customer support, customer engagements are elevated to a completely other level. And that is something that our industry greatly benefits from if used right, if used correctly. Yeah, I think that's the trends that we're seeing.
There are lots of questions I'd like to follow up on that, and we can go technology on one side, user on the other side. Let me start with the technology because you just mentioned complexities. So compared to the past, is it easier or is it still complex for providers to enable A2P on call center and so on? Is that a big thing? In other words, is there a big investment if you have a call center to turn it into a voice and text call center?
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I think to set the stage to talk about potentially perceived complexities, I want to highlight that in North America, right, with the various like options that you have to implement texting, North America, like their texting is still huge and successful, right? Like it's a communications market that managed to scale up very well. The volumes are crazy. Like it's trillions of messages per year. Like that's the one with like 12 zeros. It's nuts at what scale it's still being like used. And I would see three like major upsides in North America that other regions still didn't quite get right yet, and to leverage texting at a similar level. And potentially, like out of these come perceived complexities, but I will come to that in a minute. So first difference I would say in North America is that the cost per phone number and per message are very affordable to an extent that even Joe the plumber can benefit from non-traditional texting services. Secondly, with the implementation of 10DLC A2P, you have actually a system that enables conversational use cases, right? So in contrast to the alphanumeric sender IDs that are mostly popular elsewhere, text-enabled 10-digit loan codes allow for user-initiated use cases and replies, which is extremely important for what we have mentioned earlier about the uprising use cases and the digital transformation of customer engagement. So that allowed the NA market to continue to grow successfully, even when like unidirectional use cases like OTP, notification, marketing traffic started to saturate. And I think the third difference is that spoofing is not a problem. Like because phone numbers are linked to a single provider in North America, the messaging ecosystem can work on whitelisting registered sender IDs rather than letting everything through. So this being said, like, what does this mean today if you want to get started? And how does it compare to the past? Like in the past, you needed a mobile phone to do texting, right? And today, programmable messaging is readily available, bringing texting to all sorts of environments, like Google Voice, Skype, text now, ping out, free texting services, web services, applications, but also call centers, customer care apps, water management systems. I could go on forever, like not to forget marketing platforms, and currently also growing strongly e-commerce platforms. So the entire customer journey, like from awareness, discovery to consideration and purchase, up until retention and loyalty, is enriched by non-traditional conversational texting services. And of course, over the time, our ecosystem has developed best practices to set those up and to manage such non-traditional texting services. And with a variety of possibilities to implement texting, it can at times seem complex to get started. But to answer your question, it really isn't. Like, in fact, the reason why it isn't complex in North America is because of how they've orchestrated that. Like they are using central registries for all sorts of use cases, like porting, SMS enablement, toll-free phone numbers, shortcodes, 10DLC A2P campaigns. Like, you know where to go for each of these specific implementations and use cases, where to turn to, where your hand gets hold, and where you're like guided through that process. And in the end, it works, and it's worth it because it's like creating great customer experiences.
Well, you mentioned some of those complexities where you mentioned the phone numbers. So yeah. Right now, you were just talking about the different types of phone numbers, specifically in North America. And we'll probably have to wait for a second to explore a bit more. But what do you say, what does the process look like, all of these different instances? How do you enable them? How do you leverage them for text purposes? Shortcode, I would even say non-geographical numbers like a free phone, free calls, and the fact that there is no mobile phone numbers allocations in US. I find all numbers are equally treated, right, as not a specific phone.
Yeah.
How do you get by to do that? And do you need a orchestration there?
Yeah, you touched on a very interesting point. Like when A2P was first introduced, it was introduced on shortcodes, right? So let's talk about this first, because they were the original first implementation for business texting. So registering a shortcut today takes still a very long time and requires larger investments of a few thousands of dollars. And they come with a few downsides, right? So besides that operational process, they're also not suitable to localize your experience, right? So if you run a bunch of retail stores and you want to enable them to engage with their customers via texting, you can't register a shortcode for each and every retail shop, right? Like that just doesn't scale. And another thing is just like the shortcodes don't work internationally either. Like there is a significant amount of like international phone numbers that are being provided when enterprises and businesses ask their consumers to provide a phone number. Like for fashion, it's somewhere between 10 and 15, sometimes in larger cities, 30% of the consumers that they have, right? So that's a no-go to use it there. Another thing which predominantly to me is the largest downside, which was back in the old days sort of forgotten, because like shortcodes can't be called, like there is no voice channel on it. And for a multi-channel strategy that we've mentioned earlier, that is a no-go, that just doesn't go. So that's like that one like channel. Then another thing that I want to point out here is like all of you probably know, but the US doesn't allow alphanumeric standard IDs. It's just not an option. It's not a thing, right? So shortcode complex, long investments, old school implementation, alphanumeric not an option. So what are we looking at? So we're now actually looking at like an immense opportunity by taking a look at like how many phone numbers are like active or are assigned in North America, right? So the FCC publishes numbers, and according to them, there are about 1 billion assigned phone numbers in North America, right? And phone numbers are there to be used for communication services. According to the ITU, there are about like 400 million phone numbers in North America that are assigned to mobile phones. So these are native mobile numbers with texting capabilities, but they should be used for person-to-person texting. They should be used on mobile phones, not for businesses. So what has then happened over time, like in North America, there are now about 200 million phone numbers that can do voice and are enabled for non-traditional texting in the Net Number Services Registry. And that number also includes about like 5 to 10 million toll-free phone numbers. So this means that for every like second or for every 2 traditional mobile numbers, there is 1 non-traditional new texting service number. And I think that's quite an impressive scale to look at. And for that, I think I still owe the answer of what needs to be done in order to utilize that, right? So that's an option that is not available in the majority of regions around this globe, probably nowhere. But the US has actually utilized it, and that kept the ecosystem so lively and so engaged. And one of the reasons why it is so simple is that getting a 10-digit number, like a normal phone number, like a local phone number, whatever, like a landline number, fixed line number, VoIP number, is very straightforward for businesses. Like you just go to a service provider, you get it. Like almost every business know how to get it because generally all of them have one. And if you take a look at toll-free phone numbers, the process is similarly easy. Like it's straightforward. You just have to go to a number provider that is also registered as a so-called responsible organization. So getting the phone number that enables you to do the service is easy. On the other hand, it is also very easy for the service provider to SMS enable these numbers for texting services by the central registries that the US has. Now, as a business, if you want to leverage that, there are best practices on how to register your company and your use case with the campaign registry. So what you can then do is go to your service provider and say, that's the registered use case that I have. Now, please whitelist the phone numbers that I have for such registered use cases. And here you can do both, right? You can just like ask for a completely new number if you don't have one already, or use your existing one, which like I prefer actually. So yeah, there are still a few things that the industry is currently figuring out on how to further improve that going forward, particularly looking at and how to do this process for toll-free phone numbers. But I expect us to see some updates there like pretty soon.
Yeah. Well, exciting. If you are in one of those countries outside of North America, but potentially still in the fixed first rather than mobile first world, you're probably sitting on a lot of companies having their numbers, unknown numbers, and that could be optimized for text message as well, and equally allow them to do all of those. So that obviously it's a change. It requires a change in some cases, but what a great opportunity to create some real omni-channel everywhere, not just in the US. Let's go back. I did say that I had a questions, and let me see if I can take you off piste for a while. I'll try to I'll try to confuse you. But we've been talking about some of the technical and business side. Now, I just wanted to highlight that that's not completely new for the world of messaging out there. Though some of those cases have been where, the cases where WhatsApp, for instance, started with. So a user seems to be taking it. So is that what you're suggesting? You're suggesting a similar way to WhatsApp, go to a website, here I am, send me a text, and start having a conversation with me.
Absolutely. Right. Like there are many advantages if you think about this, right? And like WhatsApp did this in their like go-to-market strategy as well. They advertised them to use their existing phone numbers because they're known, and to add like more capabilities on top of that. Why is that the case? Multiple reasons. So the first use case that always came to mind is like if somebody's calling your business and they're in a waiting queue, like use that to create user adoption of a new texting service that you roll out by having an IVR element and say like, okay, you can now either wait 10 minutes for an agent, or we can text you an SMS or like a WhatsApp in that case, and you can tell us about your problem there, and we can probably resolve it immediately there, so you don't have to wait. And what that then created was a very seamless transition from one channel to another. It just feels great in this regards. And all of the call centers, all of the like IVRs, going through their digital transformation today can use that to reduce their costs, can do that to improve the loyalty and relationship to their customers. It's awesome from a perspective of engagement, right? You have the phone number already being printed and published on collaterals. You have it already on your website. Often customers also have it like stored on their phone as a contact already. Like I for my local bank, for my barbershop, and for other like craftsmanships, like I have that contact stored in my phone. I have my insurance stored in my phone. When they call me or when I call them, like my phone also recognizes that phone number and replaces that phone number with whatever I have stored to be like a trustworthy or good description of that business. So if you use existing phone numbers and you have invested already so much into announcing that phone number as part of your business identity, you get a lot of advantages like this, what you can call even like branding for your communications. And there is also something very special about this when it comes to re-engagement over time. Like if I have called a number or interacted with a number via voice calls in the past, like it's very natural to me to like receive some communications after a while from them to re-engage, to reopen a case, to ask me how I was like satisfied with the service. Like if I, for example, call a call center for support question, and I would be asked whether I would be willing to participate in like rating that, which I typically do. And they asked me whether I want to do the rating after the call or via messaging later on. I would prefer the messaging, right, rather than to extend the call and make it go on. I can think about this, I can answer asynchronously. I think that's really great. So if you do that as a business, like you save costs. You don't have to spend twice on phone numbers, right? Like initially you've paid for your voice phone numbers, you have them there already. Now what you can do, you can just add texting on top of it. You don't have to announce it, you don't have to invest it. User adoption is more seamless. And you don't have to pay for a second set of phone numbers, which in many cases can up to like 10,000 of phone numbers per business, right? Like that is significant. They have either so many agents or so many use cases, so many retail shops. It's like they have different like local stores, local presences that need their own identity. It's a win-win, I would say.
And I'm talking now out of my own experience. I'm thinking of my own dentist and GP, the medics in UK. They come to me with, I call them on a fixed line, but they reply to me on a different number. That seems to be wasteful. That's not consistent, right? So it makes me thinking, where am I calling them? What am I doing? So you're touching on my life right now, but talking about the generic one, in terms of use cases, you already touched on some of them, but what would you say that are a particular one that probably are really unique in terms of advantages for business tactics, like the one using voice numbers? What would be the one that is a champion of a non-traditional use cases?
I think the champion of it is really customer support. Like I don't want to wait like on a calling line if I have a problem. Like, and these things need to move to something that can be automated, that can be done on a toilet. And like if I have a place that I can re-engage with a brand whenever I want at any time, and I get help, and I don't have to go to a website, I don't have to engage with a live agent, I don't have to provide a lot of context. That's really, for me, I would say, like this is awesome. And then I think something that also comes to mind when you say that is like WhatsApp has a problem today when it comes to escalation path, right? So you can have a customer support case and you like do that on WhatsApp. But on occasion, like this doesn't work, and you want to escalate that. So you want to actually yell at someone. So we're going back to the advantages of voice calling. Like today, one of the biggest problems is like you can't do that on WhatsApp. Like if you're engaging with WhatsApp on a WhatsApp business account, like you can't hit the call button at the top. Like it's not working yet. If you though have texting services that are being used already on like a call center or like an agent that is answering it, you can have an escalation part that is very easy. Like if something doesn't work, doesn't go, you just hit the call button at the top of the contact and it get immediately to a person and have that last resort to really deal with challenging situations. I think that's a killer argument why you would say like, yeah, I can do that.
Well, let's talk about the data side. And well, you were explaining before how in a number is more of an intelligence of phone number, is also the tools for register itself. But what kind of intelligence tools, what kind of toolkit would you need in that case to make all of these things happening?
Yeah, I think making all of these things happen is more of the side of actually using the registry, the central registry. I think what is also important there and where the SMS industry is behind is that you also then need to maintain that and run that productively. Like sometimes our industry tends to think that like setting something up and that's it, right? Like we have set up the business, we have technically enabled it. So that's the end of our story. But us providing data services have shown that there is much more to it, right? So there are plenty of reasons providers should be using phone number intelligence powered tools. To highlight why that is important and what you can do, there is, if you use data powered intelligent solutions, you can actually trace back who was doing something with a phone number and what they have done in the past. What does that mean? So a phone number is not just a phone number anymore. Now the phone number becomes part of an identity that you can look up. You can actually take a look at who is the service provider of that phone number. And in a world where you actually have also registered, like in North America, a business and a use case for a phone number, you can actually take a look at who is in charge of the traffic, who is the originator, who is the brand, and what was the original intention to do so. So what that means is that like you're not anonymous anymore, it's part of your business identity. And by doing something, you actually create something that is a reputation. And that's something that's a little bit overlooked today, but this is what data really comes back to. You have like a history and you can like rate things and see what's going on. So why is that important for texting? Like it is very important for service providers to like monitor and report on what's going on the activities in their network, right? They have to identify bad actors. They have to identify good actors. They have to build some sort of like a predictive model of what's going to happen on certain connections or phone numbers in the future. So they can throttle the traffic, they can upscale the traffic, they can do some scrutiny and more analyzing like the content of it, and so on and so forth. And what it has come down to, like going back to businesses and contact centers, is that the reputation that these systems today create based on all of that phone number data is really determining the scale at which you can reach out to like your customers and to mobile subscribers. Like if you take a look at the rules and policies brought out by mobile operators, you see that Fortune 500 and Russell 3000 companies usually get a head start in that, right? They have sort of a big reputation. So when they register, and they register specifically with the mobile operators, they get increased high throughputs because of a very good reputation. So why does that matter, right? So if you think about you're not a Russell 3000 and you want to start texting, nobody knows you, so your initial throughput is probably be limited. Now, over time, no complaints accumulate, people have a good experience, you increase, no complaints, everything is fine, your reputation should go up, so should your throughput, so you can engage with this more. And that's a concept, by the way, that WhatsApp has implemented nicely, right? Like there is a reputation that is even displayed to you on an online portal, whether a phone number is currently performing well or not. So it gives you a very good indication on whether the use case implementation that you have, the service that you have, is providing value or is perceived as an annoyance to your users and they don't like it, like the user complaints. I think that's a very important thing to understand, that you need tools that allow you to monitor your phone numbers, to analyze phone numbers, to trace back phone numbers, to build reputation, and to understand what's really going on. So another element there is, like, when you do that, right, there is also the point of, I have now this reputation and I want to protect it, right? So you want to make sure that nobody else is like imposing as you. Like I said, spoofing is not a thing, but still account hacking can be a thing, which, like, you need data intelligence solutions to actually like recognize that and to be alerted to that in real time and very quickly.
Well, let me try to be a bit neutral sometimes, is my job as well. So we talked about how the US and North America are one of the examples how these things are happening. In practice, they arrived maybe to business messaging potentially later than other markets, but they're flourishing now. They're doing a lot of things. Now, let me ask you, what gaps are there? let's find the weaknesses equally. So in terms of what's today versus what it could be, where could they improve themselves?
Yeah. What I've just described at the end about the reputation sounds great, but it also sounds great because I mentioned WhatsApp and how they present this to the businesses. Like, they have a clear service level. Like, if you sign up as a business there, like, they communicate to you what service level you can expect and why. On SMS, I think that process currently is a bit mad. So what I want to say is that one of the biggest gaps today are these missing feedback loops for SMS. Like businesses that are committed to texting as a strategic channel of their customer engagement strategy, they require transparency on what's going on, right? And like, I've illustrated that by comparing that to WhatsApp. Meta is providing these detailed feedback on your phone numbers, right? They will tell you when there are like users that are complaining. So they help you in like throttling and not rolling out harmful use cases and implementation, and help you to scale the good ones, right? So, so the rules that are initially put out, or that are put out today, that govern what you can do on SMS to what extent, are unfortunately still fragmented. And the communication on your reputation degrading, and the subsequent actions that are being taken, like throttling or blocking, I think today seem to be arbitrary for many businesses. I think there are big complaints out there in the market that businesses say, I have committed, I have registered, I went through this lengthy process, I've gotten a rating, I've even accepted it, and now rolling out my services, building good user experiences, I don't get enough feedback that allows me to scale my business and really roll with it productively. So there is a need for more data sharing of these feedback loops between mobile operators, service providers, and businesses.
Well, great. No more information sharing and feedback loop. We're talking about the data economy after all. So that seems to be fit with a lot of things that people are talking about, and how the telecom industry can be part of it. Talking about telecom industry and part of it, netnumber is very much a part of the telecom industry, as you were saying, as a registry. And you seem to suggest, probably with no surprise to some, that the registries are very important to get this element, because what you pointed out right now is how these unlocking value and innovation was allowed by having something and orchestrations behind, but make sure that all of those things, including some of the supporting good news like spoofing not allowed almost in the market, that'll be great to know. But can you expand Can you expand a bit on how this works and why is registry behind so important?
Yeah. I think when you take a look at the current ongoing discussions around like fighting the negative sides of what's going on, the majority of these discussions are based on the fact that telecommunication networks are complexly interconnected networks. They're not closed networks, right? So like know your customers, it's almost impossible because you don't have a relationship with each and every user of your network like WhatsApp has. But I want to quote here, like one of the recent MEF events around security. I want to quote Google here, who said at one of the events, like when for RCS, right, they started to introduce like company registration with included vetting. It basically eliminated user complaints, right? So what that means is that it is like registering companies and businesses and knowing them is the most important implementation to keep a network clean and valuable and trusted, right? So although there are voices out there that don't like this and consider this like to be an annoying barrier and too complex process, it is really a mandatory like step to trust a channel to have all of the parties register. Now, there are implementations out there how you can do that decentralized and whatnot. And I think there are great ideas and great concepts, and I as a consumer would love them. I would potentially even technologically love them, but they are so far out, it doesn't help us today. And I think there is a certain urgency now having like the competitors around the block that are already like having all of these advantages. We really need to move fast. And the implementation that we have today are central registries, right? So now you can say like why can't the mobile operators do that themselves? Or like on RCS, it was tried as well. Like the reason is really the interconnection and the interworking. Like if you run a closed network like Apple or WhatsApp or Instagram, registering businesses and whatnot basically just translates to having a good know your customer, because everybody on your network, it's a closed network, everybody becomes your customer, right? But as I said, if you run a complexly interconnected network, like the majority of telecommunication networks have many interconnections with other numerous third-party networks. In this case, which is necessary also to have ubiquity, interconnection, it's probably hitting the OTT players at one point as well. You don't have a customer relationship with everyone. So this goes beyond know your customer. It's basically knows your partner's customers. And nobody will trust you with that, right? Like, you also cannot ask a business to sign up with each and every network provider like RCS in the beginning has tried and maybe still trying. Like that fragmentation has proven like over decades to create complexities that denies, and I would even say repulses enterprises to engage with the service. It's just too complex. So I would say that the mobile messaging industry needs to commit to trusted independent central registries for the exchange of vetted data today. Like that's our option today. It's working. We have examples of it. There are obviously things that we can improve on, like sharing more data, reputation, not just stopping at the setup, but then also continuing productively roll out like non-traditional use cases that are great, that customers want. We have to like take care of them and like cradle them until they're like mature enough to like run as by themselves. And the other technologies and propositions that are out here, they need more time because they require other technological implementations along the entire traffic chain. Imagine all of these interconnected networks rolling out like certificate checking, like with encrypted signatures. Like all of these implementations platform would have to like make like software changes to their implementations in order to adopt, which is almost impossible to get like within a time frame that is needed for us. So the central registries are like a great place if you have like trusted neutral third parties running it and administering it, like also MEF is doing and others are doing, to really help us out here to get this know your customer, which is not really a know your customer because it's more like a know your user on your network type of registration, because only that can establish trust. And it is very efficient, has been proven by the closed networks.
Well, you heard Marco saying that, and if you are watching, listening online, ask questions, write your comments, challenge him. We always like for debate around here. But one thing that I will agree definitely with Marco right now is know your customer is seen by some as they will know about my customers or know your competitors' customers. So that question of competitions in the interconnected world gives it a three-dimensional view, as much as that's a good thing for managing to keep bad actors away. Competition-wise, some of those people are really keen to get the independency, the secrecy, the kind of locked information, as you were talking about as well. But we'll come back to it. There are many more discussions we can have on that. But I want to go back also in view of the time that we have, because we've been talking about North America a lot, and that's where, let's say, the model starts specifically. But what should we say about the adoptions at global level? Where is something like this available equally, or where could it be available? What's going to happen next?
Yeah, I don't have a glass barrel. Like, what's happening next? I wish I could predict this. That would probably make my job much easier. But I think there are certain trends ongoing that we can comment on and try to evaluate. Like, I have an opinion on that, and I want to maybe kick off like a debate on that one, right? So yes, I think North America is a great role model here. Like, not everything is perfect, by far it's not. But the success of texting there proves that the implementations are ahead of other regions. And I believe this is because North America has always driven innovation and conversations from a perspective of growing business. If I take a look at the UK, Ireland, Germany, Australia, Canada, like, it feels to me like many of these countries that debate central registries are only focusing on the negative sides, like registries as a solution to fight fraud and scam, right? To supervise what's going on, to exclude bad actors. Like, all of this is like very like associated with criminal activities. It's more of something where I naively like would run a business, an enterprise that is not engaging in negative activities. I would be asking myself, like, why do I have to pay to fight that? Like, if my services now become more expensive because you want to fight fraudsters, which I'm not responsible for, like, what do I get in return of this? Like, the conversation is still limited, right? So if we as an industry want trust and we want these channels to thrive, we can only do that if we can afford that. And to that extent, it feels to me like these conversations have to go beyond like fighting fraud and whatnot. They have to go into like, what additional value can we create? And I hope that in the beginning of this webinar, I have elaborated on what was achieved in North America by implementing central registries, allowing fixed line numbers, landline numbers, toll-free numbers, VoIP numbers, non-geographic phone numbers to be text enabled, to be also being used for text messages, to allow that scale, to allow that commercial affordability for the entire market. So I really don't understand why conversations today in some other countries are only limited to registering alphanumeric sender IDs, which can only be used for traditional texting cases. Like, they cannot be used for non-traditional user-initiated conversational use cases, which is all over messaging right now. Like, every business strategy is about conversational. It's not about just the user authentication, A2P, or marketing. Like, that's not what they're excited about. They want to create long-term loyalty. They want to create relationships. They want to have a channel that the user actually feels comfortable with re-engaging, right? Like, they have seen in WhatsApp, once the channel is established and you have solved the problem on that channel, that users remember that and they come back to you when they have questions about a new product release or when they want a new recommendation for an upsell. Like, you can, with loyalty and having good channel, create more value and upsell and revenue. And I think that's a piece that's sometimes forgotten in these conversations. And that should be brought to the table as well. It shouldn't be only about blocking and killing the fraudsters. It should be about allowing other texting use cases that are being very popular and being rolled out on WhatsApp to be rolled out on text messaging channels, on traditional SMS, but also RCS going forward. And for that, we have to provide like central places where businesses can go to, transparent service levels, I spoke about this before. I'm repeating myself now, but I'm very, like, you see, passionate about this topic. Like, I never understood why in Germany you can't do that. Like,
well, don't worry, because I'm going to ask you exactly that now. I'm going to ask you to repeat yourself, as we only have about 3 minutes left in our 45 minutes. How would you recap the challenges? As we went back, we did say, as of the beginning, this is not just a chance. We're not talking today about the bad things that happen in SMS, but we're looking at the good thing that could happen to the SMS world. We're talking about extending the use cases. And that's exciting. But what are the challenges? How do we get there? What's the future? Take that, crystal ball that you don't have and try to use it to your maximum here, Marco.
Yeah. So I would say that when you take a look at that, what's going on in the next 2 years, like the biggest challenges for SMS industry are that we have now real competitors out there, and they're doing a great job in marketing their services and answering the demands for conversational texting use cases today that are still growing, like 50% quarter over quarter of some of the traffic numbers that are out there in growth numbers. And their biggest advantage is that businesses know where to go. When they want to get started, they're being taken by the hand until the service is successful. So that does not stop at having a phone number and channel set up. That hand-holding continues during the initial exploration and what you would call potentially like plateau of productivity, final scaling of customer experiences through feedback loops and transparent service level expectations. So SMS and RCS have to get on par with that. And I think I'm not alone with that, like demand to the industry. I think others that are on that conversational path have put forward that demand and suggestion as well. And if we go even further from the crystal ball perspective, who knows? Like, if interworking, which is our strong suit, like SMS has always been about interworking, like multiple connection. That's what we have managed over years and built solutions and like convenient solutions for enterprises to utilize that. If interworking between all messaging channels ever becomes a topic, RCS and Apple, what's a business and SMS or RCS, like we're here already with a solution that has been dealing with interconnected networks before and interoperational networks before. So we will be right here and potentially play a role there as well.
Well, that's great. And it's great to end up on such a positive news. So the growth is out there. And we don't need to look at the plateau, but it looks like we need to get ready and make sure we can empower the growth by taking the right steps and making these use cases potentially working. Well, Marco, thanks again for joining us. I think that's
thanks
all
for having me
today, but we're going to continue this discussion, I'm sure, as so much of interesting growth there is out there. But for now, Dr. Marco Lafrentz, VP of Business and Market Development at netnumber, officially thank you, and I hope we'll speak to you soon. And to all of you as well, thanks for joining us, and we'll speak to you as well soon. Bye-bye. Bye, Marco.
Bye, everyone.